Welcome to this week's episode of Aviation Marketing Hangar Flying. I'm Paula Williams.
I'm John Williams.
And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission is
to help all you ladies and gentlemen out there in the aviation world sell more products and services.
Absolutely. And this week's episode is about B2B email marketing in 2019. It is not 2000. We don't do things the same way, right? Although a lot of people do.
Some people do, but I suspect the result's short.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about some of the new technologies that are available, and also the new expectations that your customers have for email that they receive from you, so how to make that work. So, since our mission is to help aviation companies sell more of their products and services, every episode we do is about that, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so business to business email is still very effective, but only if you do it right. So the things we're going to talk about today, marketing automation is more than just email, although that is the thing that people think of. So that's why we titled the episode this, right? The three things that we have talked about when we talk about marketing automation are keeping track of people, delivering marketing materials, and making good decisions, and how best to do that using the tools that are available today that they didn't have in 2000 or 2006 or, like really any time before the last couple of years,
Right.
And they're getting better all the time, right?
Yeah, so certainly helps.
Right. But first, a joke.
Okay.
You get to tell the joke.
How do you know when you're doing too much email marketing?
Exactly, and we'll tell you the punchline after. This episode is being brought to you by our Aviation Lead Generator, which is actually a new product that we're rolling out. This is the 2019 version of our Aviation Lead Generator, which basically is several different technologies, including SharpSpring, JetNet, many other types of technologies, plus our expertise in writing content or videos or whatever we need to do to get that effective for you. So we basically install the program, we configure it, we teach you how to use it, we put the content together in the first place and help you run it from there. And to learn more about that, you can get the Marketing Automation Playbook from our website. Right? Okay. All right. So, carry on. How do you know when you're doing too much email marketing?
You look for the unsubscribe link on a postcard.
Yeah. That's not good, right?
No.
Okay. So a full pipeline is the key to independence and happiness. And if you listened to our podcast last week, you know why that's the case. That's what we want for ourselves, and that's what we want for all of our clients, is a full pipeline. And email is a really great way to establish and manage a full pipeline.
True.
The reason that we want a full pipeline is because we want the freedom to refuse any particular project or client for any reason. We also want that for our clients so that they have the freedom to refuse any particular project or client for any reason. And we want our clients to have the prosperity to treat their clients, their team, and their family very, very well. That's what we all want, right?
Of course.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's get down to how to get that done, right?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the three things we're going to talk about today is how great business-to-business email and a great business-to-business email program will help you keep track of people, deliver marketing materials, and make good decisions. And these are things that we could not do even 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And we're using new software to do this. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do differently now than we could even 2 or 3 years ago. Right?
And just so you know, we always try out software before we recommend it to somebody.
Absolutely. We don't want to be in the situation of making a bad decision, so we want to make sure that we have done things ourselves.
And if there's a glitch somewhere, we should already know
what it is and how to solve it, and if
how
it's
to remediate it,
right.
or whatever, right?
Exactly. Okay. So first of all, keeping track of people. The way that we used to do this in Infusionsoft was using a pipeline. And the pipeline in Infusionsoft looked like this. It was very serviceable and very utilitarian, and it did us more good than not having a pipeline.
Spoiler note, we don't use this anymore.
No, we don't. But the nice thing is you can see what stage any particular opportunity is in. You can see some basic notes. You can see, one of the things that drove me crazy about this is you don't have contact information on this page. You have to actually click into each of these to get the contact information for each of these opportunities. And if you've got a salesperson, especially one who uses a phone or a tablet, that can be really irritating. Every extra step is a little more friction and a little more time on their part trying to get things done.
And you want those guys happy to use this thing.
Exactly. So a lot of people use MailChimp to do email. That one actually does not have a pipeline at all, unless you connect it to something like Pipedrive, which is a CRM system or customer relationship management system, as is Infusionsoft and things. So, if you have a really small budget, you can do this by stringing little pieces of software together. There is a downside to every piece of complexity that you add.
Oh, boy.
It's just more time that you have to spend, but it certainly can be done.
And when somebody changes something and the other two don't, you have an issue.
Right, exactly. So keeping these working in sync is kind of fun, right?
And that's one word for it.
Okay. But it certainly can be done and certainly should be done. So even if you're using MailChimp, you should have a pipeline and you should know how many opportunities you have, because once again, a full pipeline is the key to happiness, right? And it's worth it. It's worth the extra work to make sure you've got it. And even if you're doing it on a whiteboard, I'm pointing at my whiteboard as if you know where that is. But even if you're doing your pipeline on a whiteboard, it's important to do it, right?
Oh, yeah, you have to do it.
Right. So we're just going through some different tools and how they do it. This is what it looks like in Salesforce. Very cool, very complicated, but very cool. Lots of great information on here. It's color-coded, it's cool. If you have a really big company and you have many salespeople and you have a lot of things going on, then Salesforce is probably the best option for you. I would say if you have more than about 3 salespeople or a team of maybe 20 or more in your sales and marketing team that are doing different things, then Salesforce is a really great option.
A little bit pricey by the time you get it configured and usable, but it's really good at what it does.
Exactly. I'll tell you what I like about this, and that is that it's very visual and it looks like a board game. There was a company that I went into as a product manager, and what we did is we made this big laminated game board on one of their walls, and then we would move each product through the process as it went through the development process, and then by the time you get to the end, you win the game. And I love game board visuals and game strategy because it makes work fun, and the more fun it is, the more likely you are to do it, the more enthusiastic you are, the better the team communicates, and so on, because we're all kind of wired for games, right? Mm-hmm. As human beings.
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway.
Wired for games anyway. It's just 1,000 times more fun. And so that's one of the things that I like about SharpSpring is that it looks like a game board. So, somebody goes from a qualified lead to the different phases in our funnel. This is actually just a dummy mock-up of the pipeline in SharpSpring. But things go from being a qualified lead to a needs analysis to a schedule to a demo set, demo attended, and you can put as many stages in this as you want to. Another neat thing about SharpSpring is you can have multiple funnels. So if we have a product that has a really short and simple process, people tend to either have a needs analysis and then either buy it or not. That's a shorter funnel, and we don't have to go through this whole thing. If we have one that involves a lot of software and a lot of decisions and is designed for bigger companies and things like that, then we probably will have to have a demo, and then we may need to go up a stage in their organization, find the right decision makers, have another demo, All of those things need to happen so we can have longer or shorter pipelines for different products.
As you probably figured out, this is what we now use.
Right, exactly. Okay, so keeping track of people and what we do with that, and what most software will call that, is something called a pipeline. And whether you do that yourself on a whiteboard, as we mentioned, whether you use an email software program like Constant Contact or MailChimp that just delivers software, you can use that information, or just delivers email, you can use that information to populate your pipeline. So after somebody opens an email, then you know, okay, well, maybe it's time to give them a phone call and do a needs analysis. And then once you do a needs analysis, then maybe they'll want a demo, and then you do the demo. And whatever stages you want to have a process for that, and it needs to be documented somewhere, whether it's in software or your whiteboard or a piece of paper on your wall, or whatever you need to do. Make sure you do that. So you also want to adapt your email strategy to people depending on where they are in your pipeline. So people who are further along, or people who are worth more, their opportunity is greater in the pipeline because they're buying a larger product, or they are more likely to buy based on the interactions we've had with them so far, then that kind of person gets more attention than someone who is less likely to buy, or someone who is buying a less expensive product.
This is not just for email either. This works with postcards as well, right?
Yeah, and any other type of marketing.
Right.
But,
so put something in a magazine, if you've done it programmed right, you'll figure it out when they come in.
Absolutely. Right, and we'll talk about campaigns when we...
Right, but it's just so we know it's not just for email.
That's true. That is absolutely true. So one of the things that drives people crazy nowadays is when they get emails from you every day. And this happens with even some of the marketing companies that I communicate with. I get emails from them every single day, and I never read them. They should know that, and their software should adapt to once a week or once a month, or whatever it is that I'm most likely to respond to. Because if I'm getting them too often, I lose interest in that company, and I'm going to unsubscribe. So your email should adapt. If someone is really, really interested and they need daily tips, like they've just bought your product and they're really into learning about it and things like that, then daily tips might make sense. But if they're not opening them, for God's sake, stop sending them, right?
And if you don't know whether they're opening them or not, then you got the wrong.
Exactly. So, you want to keep track of where people are in your pipeline or in the life cycle, and adapt accordingly.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're just driving people crazy and not doing any good.
Spending money and losing clients.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So the second thing we need to do is deliver materials. And delivering materials has always sounded pretty much the same. About 10 years ago, we started to be able to personalize emails and put Dear John as an example. I know your company, ABCI, does aviation marketing, and therefore I thought you might be interested in our product X. And, that's a different email than a dear friend or dear neighbor or something along those lines.
Or just leaving out the address dear.
Exactly. And
then start talking.
And then telling you, trying to sell you, John, the latest Taylor Swift album, and going on and on and on about that without knowing anything about you and not realizing that you're maybe not their target audience. And then sending you daily emails.
Yeah, but I can fix that. See, I have this fabulous spam machine.
Exactly.
And I just click spam and it's no longer a problem.
Right, which is worse than clicking unsubscribe because...
yeah, but that's just the way it is.
Right. So, you want to make sure that you're targeting things correctly to a person who's actually interested, and then also that it's tailored to them in the best possible way. And tailoring is different now than it was a million years ago, right?
Even 20.
Or even 20. It's not just the name and the company and other things. It's also based on their behavior. So based on things that a person does, you can set up things called triggers in most CRMs.
Right.
And the triggers are when someone fills out a particular form or visits a particular web page, then I know that John is not interested in Taylor Swift. He is interested in Aretha Franklin, as an example. I would know what his taste in music is, so I'd be able to tailor the emails that I send to him accordingly. I'd also know how often he opens those emails, which pages on our site that he's visited, which products he may have purchased from me in the past. A whole bunch of different things could be triggers for different types of behavior. So like this trigger, when someone has filled out this particular form but hasn't filled out another one, maybe they're interested in this Florida tech startup, but they haven't completed the application form, then you know exactly where they are in the process. They're interested, but they haven't completed. So they're not quite sold yet. So they probably need a little more information. And so then you can target an email that's really specific and say, you probably have questions about this Florida tech startup situation. Let me tell you how much it costs and when it is, and all of the details about it. And then they're a lot more likely to take the next step in your process. So, if you're doing charter services as an example, and you've flown someone to Hawaii, maybe for their next trip they want to go to Hawaii again, but maybe they want to go somewhere else. So from your experience of working with clients, you may have an idea of people who have gone to Hawaii are more likely to be interested in going to Puerto Rico. So you can do some suggestions for them, and this is a unique URL that would be triggered by someone's behavior. Right? Okay. So what used to be really generic emails are not tolerated by people very well anymore. Right?
At least not me.
Okay. And by most of your target customers, you want to make sure that you are only sending emails that are relevant to your customer, and that you're making it really clear why you're sending it to them at this point.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you want to deliver targeted marketing materials, and then you also want to make good decisions. And how I make good decisions, and we already talked about how I love game boards and visual stuff and things like that. Part of the problem that people have right now with marketing is that they're overwhelmed with information. Or, let's say you go to JetNet and you get a list of 5,000 potential customers based on the parameters that you put in. So you look for all of the people who own a particular type of aircraft, make and model of aircraft.
Or who own an airplane.
Right, exactly. And you go through all of the criteria, and you still have too big of a list. What you can do from that point is you start engaging with those folks. So maybe you send them a postcard, and some number of them are going to be interested in your product or service. They can raise their hand and go to a web page, maybe a landing page on your site that offers them an information package or a tip sheet or something like that about this particular aircraft. The people that download that will get a higher lead score. So you start with this whole list, and you've got 100% of them as cold leads. And then at some point, as you interact with them, you get, in this example, you got 18% of them are warm leads and 1% of them are hot leads. So now, instead of this list of 5,000, you've got 1% of that are people that are really worth your time to be picking up the phone and calling and talking about their airplane and talking about their needs. And
I used to do
like
this with raw math. Now, software does it for you.
Right, and it is so much easier to see which ones turn red than it is to do math all day, right? I'm serious.
For you, maybe. I like math.
Oh, I know you like math, but a lot of, actually, whenever you're processing a whole bunch of data, it is much easier to let the computer do the work and let it just turn those from blue to red, and then you know where to spend your time. And your time is better spent on the phone than it is with a calculator and or a pencil and paper or whatever.
Well, your time is.
It is.
That's what it says, your time.
Exactly. So anybody in sales and marketing, I think, is much more efficient when they can see tons of data in one graphic.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So you can click on that one and see who that is. And
it's a lot easier to make good decisions.
Exactly. Okay, this is another way that it helps you make good decisions. This is a campaign measurement. This is the campaign dashboard. So in this example, let's say you wanted to know how many people came in from Google search. Is it worth all of the time and money that you're spending on search engine optimization? And you can tell that in November of this particular year, quite a few people came in. That was your largest component, your largest lead generator was people who came in from Google search. As you track these through the process, you can tell how many of these actually buy, and then these numbers get better. So you can see what is your cost per lead, how many sales are you making, where are those sales coming from. A lot of those things are a lot easier to see, and we keep talking to people about how you need to know your numbers. Having them on a dashboard makes it 1,000 times easier to know your numbers than having to get out the calculator right every single time, and having to do our Monday meetings. We used to take hours preparing, and now we just pull this up and look at it. So much nicer, I think.
I'm glad you're happy.
It's a game board. It's colored. It looks good.
But it's informative.
And it's informative, exactly. Okay. And, people are really wired to pay time and attention to the things that are in front of them all the time. So that's the theory behind vision boards. If you've ever heard of this, there's a lady named Lee Miltier who runs the Peak Performers Group that we've been part of at times. And one of the things that she really promotes is a vision board, which is where you take what you want and you visually represent it on a board, and they actually spend a day, and this is with really high-performing type A personalities, will spend half a day building a vision board and putting this together so that they're constantly seeing it. And that's what I love about software that puts the important information where you're constantly seeing it, because that's where you're spending your time, that's where you're spending your emotional energy, that's where the back part of your brain is going, wow, our sales are a little bit lower this month than they were last month. I need to think about some new campaign ideas, or, your subconscious works on that, even when the front of your mind is putting out fires and doing all the crazy things that you do every day. So the things that you keep in front of yourself really do make a difference. I know that's hokey mind stuff, but it really does work.
Yeah, actually it works.
Mm-hmm.
It really does.
It does. Exactly. So once again, the 3 things that you really want to do with your email strategy and with everything else are, number 1, keep track of people. Don't treat everybody the same, right? 2, deliver marketing materials that are tailored and targeted. And the more you can automate that process, the better, because it happens faster and it happens with less work.
And more accurately.
And more accurately. That's true. It's real easy to hit the wrong row on a spreadsheet, or the wrong button somewhere. So the more of this you can automate, the less mistakes you have. And then 3rd, it helps you make good decisions. And once again, we love those game boards. We love those dashboards. We love having the important numbers right up front. All of that stuff is really important. All right. So if you want our help in setting up something like this, this is the first time we've been able to offer this as a product, where we install SharpSpring, which is our CRM of choice for medium-sized aviation companies. So if you're too big for MailChimp and too small for Salesforce, if you're right in that bracket, which is where most of our customers are, they don't want to spend the money on Salesforce, and they don't have the complication that really requires it. So a SharpSpring is a really, really good option for you, and you can learn more about that with the Marketing Automation Playbook, which you can download from our website. So thank you for joining us. If you'd like to talk more about this, or about your numbers, or about your challenges, or how to set up your email to make it work the way you want it to, or how to tell, how to segment, all of those strategy questions and things like that, we're happy to talk with you and spend 30 minutes just working through some of those problems with no obligation. We just love helping aviation companies sell more
Products and services.
of their products and services, and have that full pipeline, which is the key to happiness, right?
Somebody's got to.
Somebody's got to, absolutely. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great day.